Hey buddy, it's Peter, and this is the 2025 Suzuki GSX-R600. This is the super sport for the street, and like the 1000 that we reviewed a while ago, there are some things that you're gonna wanna see updated on this, like the dash, the lighting, the signals, those kinds of things. If you can put those aside, you end up with one of the best riding super sport bikes that you can really use on the street. And to be honest, I would probably recommend this if you're spending more time on the streets than the track over the 1000, because you can really explore what this is. That being said, Suzuki has the GSX-R in its lineup, and that is a great street sports bike. Is it better for you, or is this better for you? Which one should you buy? That's all the things we're going to discuss in this video. So I want to thank McLean Sports for giving me complete access to their entire product line. And on this channel, I will review everything I can that's 2025 this year, including bikes that are relatively unchanged, because you always have to talk about what this bike is in context of today. And that's what we're going to do in this video. So let's get going with this review. So I always use this spot to talk about the class that this bike is in, and of course it is the super sport class, but I kind of feel like Suzuki has kind of looked at their super sport bike class and said, you know, it's good enough. And to be fair to Suzuki, it kind of is. If they were to take this and totally revamp it, they're only going to be able to make minor differences, and most of those minor differences aren't something that someone who rides this on the street are even going to notice. This is just a real, it's almost pinnacle peak sport bike. And again, you can always make things better, you can always make things faster, you can always make things handle better, but we're really at a point now where this is beyond just about every rider's capability who buys this bike. And what that means is spending their money here to improve it may not make a huge difference in sales to them. You do lose out with, like I said, not as good of a dash, not as good of a lighting and that kind of thing, but if you can put that aside, you end up with something that is just really peak sports bike. And that's what I like about it. I think it's just something that, you know, these are the bikes that I grew up with. It used to be when I grew up with bikes, if you wanted a sporty bike, you had to get basically a super sport bike, and every year they were getting progressively better and better and better and better, and this one would be so far beyond everything I grew up with. But now they make really good street sport bikes as well, which are also beyond most people's capabilities and do have a little bit more comfort. So the class that this is in, take it to the track, absolutely. Take it on the streets, absolutely. It's a really good sport bike for everything, and it's going to be a peak performer in just about any class. Let's take a look at the front wheel, work our way through this bike, and talk about what's special on this bike. So in this channel, I always start a motorcycle review looking at the front wheel, because that tells you the manufacturer's intent for this bike. And of course, this is super sport type stuff. One thing you can't see is the massive Brembo brakes. There's a Yamaha Tenere just off camera, and it's got Brembo brakes up front as well. And they look to be maybe half the size here. So you've got massive front brakes, dual caliper, of course, and you know, just quality stuff, lightweight wheels. These are actually only 3-spoke wheels, which is pretty rare. Usually they're 5-spoke, that kind of thing is what you see nowadays. And of course, upside down suspension. So everything here says full on super sport. No surprise there. You don't see braided lines. That's leaving room for you to customize it yourself if you wanted to. Some bikes will now come with braided lines up front, but you do see in here in the back, I don't know if you can see it on your screen. Yeah, you can see a little bit, the curved radiator. So again, everything is about being compact, aerodynamic, you know, good through the wind, that kind of thing, but getting the maximum amount of cooling for this engine. So no surprise here. The actual components are going to give you top level stuff, top spec stuff that's going to be great feeling on the road. Like I said, the only thing that you could change with the feel would be to put braided lines in here. Will it make a difference to you? Maybe, maybe not, but Brembo brakes are going to be great feeling. They're also the type of brakes that you can really hammer down again and again and again and again and again. And that's different than a street sport bike. A street sport bike is going to give you great braking the first time, maybe the second time, then they're going to start to fade a little bit. These brakes aren't going to fade as much, especially these Brembos on this super sport style bike. Everything else, sometimes people want to know about the tire sizes. 120/70 ZR17, that is the same sport bike size on just about every sport bike, whether it's a super sport, whether it's a road street sport bike, just about everything uses the same size tires. Of course, you got nice sticky tires here. These are the Battle Axe BT016F. So that's what you've got on this bike, 120 in the front, 180 width in the back. Let's move to the engine and work our way through. So this is really the heart of this bike. This is the reason to buy this bike over the fantastic Suzuki GSX-R. This is, you know, legendary in a lot of sport bike circles, and it is a 4-cylinder 599cc engine, so it's the true 600cc. And what you have here is basically large bores, short stroke. What it means is the cylinders are fairly large and they travel a very short distance. What that creates is a very high revving bike, a bike that continues to make power from the mid-range right up through the top end, and that makes this bike unique to drive compared to some of the two-cylinder bikes that are out there like Suzuki's own GSX-R. It really is the huge difference between a street sport bike and a super sport bike is the way it delivers power, and it can do that because it's designed differently. It's got that four-cylinder engine. Now, four-cylinder engines in 2025 are absolutely fading away. They're harder to get to pass various worldwide emission standards, so investing in a bike like this with four cylinders and trying to get it to continue to pass emission standards in the future is hard to do, which is part of the reason you don't see a whole lot of updates. Other than that, you see a nice lightweight frame. We're going to talk about the weight in a second when we hop across this bike. And again, everything on this bike, like every super sport, I always talk about weight centralization. Well, you can really see that weight centralization in this bike. There's literally nothing back here at all. Everything is forward and low, including the riding position. So we should take a look at that right now. So the big difference between a super sport and a street sport bike is, as far as like hopping on it, is riding position. So here you can see I am a long ways forward. For some, I would say this is uncomfortable. For someone who wants a bike exactly like this is perfect. You are absolutely canted forward on here. Now, why do they do that? Obviously, on a street sport bike, you can sit like this and you can tuck in even right to the tank. But if your handlebars are down lower, you can tuck in right to the tank. Your knees, elbows, everything can be right attached to the bike, and you have the full feeling of a super sport bike, not just the power, but the one with the bike, because you literally are in a position like this, very much one with the bike. You can still see your mirrors, you can see your dash, which is right in front of you. You've got this windshield that bumps up over your helmet, so you've got perfect aerodynamics there, and you really are in a position, so in cornering situations, from left to right to left to right, from braking and everything, you're very much one with the bike. So a couple things you don't see from there, have a steering damper down here, that's gonna help keep control. You don't usually see that on a street sport bike as well. But overall, this is your position. You've got high pegs, which are gonna allow you for having very low cornering, again, probably beyond the ability of most riders. There are 3 positions on this pegs that you can adjust them to. I'm not sure where these are. I assume that's the standard position that they recommend from the factory. Overall though, more of a leaned over position, but it is pretty comfortable. A lot of times people think like on a bicycle that a racing bike is less comfortable, but of course your hip bones kind of angle in, so it is quite comfortable. It takes some of the weight off of your rear end. It does put some weight on your wrists though. So that's a typical super sport bike. We're gonna have someone walk through. Go ahead, walk through. You got work to do, man. McLean's is working while I'm filming. We're gonna let him go through. So that's the seating position right here. Again, is it comfortable for everybody? No. Is it comfortable for a super sport? It's just fine, but it really is about making you one with the bike. That's the difference between a street sport bike, which is going to give you more comfort all the time, and this bike, which is about making everything about handling, everything about power delivery, including where you sit. So you are very much moving with the bike and experiencing something that you just don't experience on a regular street sport bike in the same way. But you would be more comfortable on a street sport bike. So before we move forward and show you the dash, I just want to show you there's a wide rear tire there. Kind of doesn't show up great on camera, but it just definitely looks wide in person. And then I want to show you sort of the dated lighting on here, but I want to show you front and rear lighting for a reason. So first of all, as we turn the lights on here, you do have 4-way flashers on this bike here. We can turn them on. The lights are up there in the bodywork. Now, some people are going to complain, hey, they're not LED, and I get that. They are certainly more amber than they're showing here on the screen. They look a little whiter because they're so bright. But what's good about this is that the lights are actually in the bodywork. So when you have the lights in the bodywork and you want to do a tail tidy, you can chop that right off, put on the tail tidy, and you still got the factory lighting up there, because Suzuki knows what you're doing with this bike. You're going to probably put a tail tidy on there. And again, they've built in their lighting right up there. Let's take a look at the front as well. We'll get that out of the way, and then we'll take a look at the dash. Taking a look at the front, again, no LED lighting on here. You do have sort of your flash to pass. If I do that right down there, you can sort of see that highlight. The headlight does flash there. Now, it's not it's not a compact light like you'd have, but it does give you a lot of visibility because it's a larger light. The one thing that is kind of cool as well as we turn on the hazard lights again is the signal lights are actually up in the mirrors. You very rarely, if ever, see that anymore. So again, just a unique look on this bike. If you see this bike signaling, you're going to know what it is right away because of some of the positioning of that kind of stuff. That's the front end. Some of you are going to like it. Some of you aren't going to like it. It is what it is. That's what Suzuki's giving us right now. Let's take a look at the dash. Taking a look at the dash, you see some things that are good and some things that are maybe less modern. Now, the things that are good is this is a very clear analog tack. And what I like about this analog tack is everything is equal from 0 right up to the 15,000 plus RPM red line. You can see exactly where this engine is, and they have a lot of spread in there. So unlike the digital dashes, you have a really precise view of where your engine is revving at a glance. And that's one of the benefits with these analog style gauges is you can see very quickly where it is on the circle, and you don't have to look at the number. You can just sort of see where it is easily. So I really like these older style tachometers just because they are easy to see. Now I get it, it's not a TFT display, it doesn't show great, and I will admit that there's more glare showing on camera here than you would see in person. This is a data dash, there's no way around it. So we'll show you a couple things here. First of all, we do have some ride modes right underneath the gear indicator there. You can see the gear indicator is currently at 0, so that's, I guess, neutral. That's an interesting way of doing it instead of an N, but that saves them from putting extra lines in there, I guess. Then you have a mode button I'll show you on the handlebar controls later. So A and B ride modes there, and you can cycle through that. And then of course, you've got just kind of the basic controls. Now the one thing I don't love is there's not a ton of adjustment on the handlebar. Actually, there we go. We can move stuff on the handlebar on the right side. Trip A, trip B, or 1, 2, sorry. And then back to odometer, and back to a timer there. And ooh, I forgot what that is. You guys can remind me in the comments below. And then you've got a clock, and then you're back to remaining on the trip or that kind of thing. So you've got all of the stuff that you need there, and you can adjust it from the right side lever. You can also adjust it through the handlebar here. So again, you've got the controls you need. We'll show you the controls right now. So I've got you on a kind of a weird angle to show these handlebars, these clip-on bars here, to show you the controls. I wanted to get this pass light on, because a lot of time your high beam is here and your off is there, or your low beam is there, and then you have a flash to pass that's a trigger right here. This is flash to pass right there, so that's how you get your high beam to go. There is a trigger down here, and that was your ride mode. So to easily adjust your ride mode from A to B, you just tap on there. You got your hazard light there, signals, and horn right there. So simple controls here, everything's easy to work, but there is a different flash to pass instead of your ride mode here, so that's worth noting. The one thing they do different on this bike that they don't tend to do as much anymore, although some bikes still do it, is they put a few extra controls on the throttle side, which is not something everybody does anymore. A lot of people try to move a lot over here and less on the throttle side. Let's show you the throttle side controls right now. Over here on the throttle side, simple kill switch, just the kill switch, excuse me. This is where I was changing some of the meter, right? It was changing some of the controls on your gauge cluster there, and this is the start button here. So you do have your sort of up-down controls here. Again, most of the time they're moving that kind of stuff to the opposite side nowadays. They didn't on this bike, that works fine, but again, you just have to keep in mind that adjusting this while you're on the throttle can be a little bit different. That's why they move it to other controls in most bikes. But I also want to show you the top of the suspension here. You've got rebound and compression adjustment on both shocks. So a lot of time it's one side or the other. Let me just show you that really quickly, and we'll talk about a couple other little controls. Take a look at the top of the show fork tube. I'm just going to sort of cover it up there. Both forks are identical. So sometimes you have tension on one side and compression on the other fork, but this one you've got tension and compression, so rebound and compression on both forks, so you can adjust it independently, which does mean you want to have things sort of identical usually, or I mean you do. So you're going to adjust it one on each side, but that is the full adjustment, and that's part of owning a super sport, right? You want to adjust your suspension, you want to have that high revving engine, you want to have the feel of that seating position. Everything's got to all sort of flow together, and that's part of the fun of owning it, is you can tweak things both for the racetrack and just for on the street riding as well. So again, both fork tubes match, they look the exact same, and that's what you've got. So most of us viewing this bike in 2025 have a good idea of what it is. The question is, should you buy it in 2025? And that answer is, there should be a narrower market for this bike today than there was back in the day. Because there used to be like I said in the past, used to be the only way to get a really sporty bike was to buy a super sport bike. And the street sport bikes, they just didn't measure up to even our abilities or the way we wanted to ride things. Now Suzuki has the really good Suzuki GSX-R that for me would be my preference for a street riding bike, but that doesn't mean that this doesn't have a market. If you are in the market for this bike, it's kind of like the if you know, you know, and that's where this thing is different. To have this high revving engine in a 600cc bike, it's very, very quick for the streets, but it's still, you can explore its power on the streets, certainly more than the 1000. but you can also take it to a racetrack. And the one thing people forget is the very compact size of this means that these bikes handle very well. It's just over 400 pounds, so it's a very lightweight bike as well. And what that means is a bike like this, if you take it to the track, you can keep up with those 1000cc bikes on everything but the straights. And in many cases, these bikes are quicker than the 1000cc bikes because they are very light, very compact, very, very good handling. So when I say all those things, you might say, well, why wouldn't I want that for the road? Well, if you've ever driven a race car on the road, most people don't want a race car. The stiffer suspension, the little more immediacy of everything, they find that it's not sort of what they want in their everyday driving. And that's sort of the same thing with this. It's not so much about stiffer suspension, but it's a little bit more focused than most people want on the road, and it's certainly more immediate than a lot of people want on the road. So it is designed to be very, very, very good at the track. The 600 bikes are certainly very popular on the road in the past, and you're still driving a legend if you buy this. You can buy this today, keep it for a long, long time. They've been proven reliable, and you will have this as sort of a legend of motorcycling in your garage. That's why you buy it. As far as everyday practical use, the reason the GSX-8S is so good is because they took elements of this bike. How do we make a street sport bike be really good above the capability of most riders on the street? And that's what they've done with the GSX-8S. So for me, the 8S is absolutely the bike to buy. But would I tell anybody not to buy this? Absolutely not. If you know what you're buying here, this thing is still really incredible, even though it hasn't had some of the updates. So there is my review of the 2025 GSX-R600. I'm getting all my bikes mixed up in my language here. If you enjoyed this or you appreciate that I'm doing this kind of stuff, make sure you leave me a like. Feel free to subscribe. I'm going to have every kind of 2025 bike I can get on this channel this year, and we're going to continue to go on through other power sports and all kinds of stuff as well. So thanks everybody for watching. Check it out at McLean Sports. Links in the description. We'll talk to you in the next one.